I never thought my disabled sister's wheelchair would be chained to our front porch by our power-hungry HOA president, until an undercover FBI agent revealed she'd been watching our neighborhood for years. How far would you go when your family's freedom is literally locked away by the very people meant to protect your community? Comment below where you're watching from. The sound of metal scraping against concrete woke me up at 5:30 a.m. I rushed to my front door still in my pajamas and couldn't believe my eyes. Two men in Willow Creek Estates HOA polos were actually wrapping a heavy chain around my sister Lisa's wheelchair and securing it to our porch railing with a massive padlock. "Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted, running outside barefoot. "That's my sister's wheelchair." The taller man handed me a paper. "Mobility devices must be stored out of sight per HOA bylaw 23.4. This is your third warning." Third warning? We never got any warnings. I was completely shocked. Lisa had only moved in with me 3 months ago after the car accident that paralyzed her from the waist down. "Ma'am, please take it up with the board," the second man said as they hurried to their golf cart and drove away. I tried to break the chain, but it was industrial grade. Lisa appeared in the doorway behind me using her crutches she hadn't touched in weeks. "What's happening, Sam?" Her voice was shaking. Lisa had worked so hard in physical therapy to gain independence with her wheelchair. "Some kind of mistake," I said, trying to stay calm for her sake. "I'll get this fixed right away." I called a locksmith who said he couldn't come until afternoon. Lisa was in tears. "I have my new job interview today. I can't miss it." I helped Lisa to my car and got her to the interview, but she was devastated about depending on me again. While she was gone, I read through all 94 pages of our HOA guidelines. There was indeed a rule about mobility equipment being stored inside or in designated areas, but the rule was clearly meant for things like bikes and scooters, not medical equipment. The locksmith finally arrived and cut the chain. It cost me $175 for the emergency service. As he worked, my next-door neighbor Diane Peterson walked by with her 3 unauthorized garden gnomes that the HOA somehow never noticed. "Such a shame what Barbara's doing to you folks," Diane whispered. Barbara Thompson, the HOA president?" I asked. Diane nodded. "She doesn't like changes to the neighborhood aesthetic." The Millers had to move after their son got a service dog that evening. I emailed the HOA board explaining Lisa's disability and requesting an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Within an hour, I received a response: "Your request for exemption is denied. Additionally, the unauthorized wheelchair ramp at your front entrance must be removed within 48 hours. I was stunned. The ramp had been approved by the city. I had permits. The next day, I called the city planning office to confirm my permits were in order. They were, but when I returned home there was a $500 fine taped to my door for unauthorized modifications. I spotted Barbara Thompson herself taking pictures of our house from the sidewalk. She was in her early 60s, perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing an expensive-looking tennis outfit despite never using the community courts. "Barbara," I approached her calmly, "can we talk about this situation? My sister Lisa has a disability, and rules are rules." She cut me off. "Your sister's condition doesn't entitle you to decrease property values for everyone else. The wheelchair ramp is barely visible from the street," I explained, "and chaining down a wheelchair is not only cruel but probably illegal." Barbara's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps Willow Creek isn't the right community for your family's needs." As she walked away, I noticed she completely ignored the Petersons' holiday inflatables still up from last Christmas and Mr. Rivera's boat parked in his driveway. Against HOA rules that night, I stayed up researching disability laws and discovered that what the HOA did clearly violated federal protections. I printed out the relevant laws to bring to the HOA meeting scheduled for the next evening. When I walked into the community center for the meeting, conversation suddenly stopped. 20 neighbors stared at me as I took a seat in the back row. Barbara was at the front table with 4 other board members. I raised my hand during the open comments section, but Barbara skipped over me repeatedly. Finally, I stood up. "I'd like to address the board about disability accommodations and the illegal chaining of medical equipment," I said loudly. Barbara's face turned red. "That's not on tonight's agenda. Sit down, or you'll be removed." My neighbor Kevin Jackson surprisingly stood up. "I want to hear what Sam has to say. My mother uses a wheelchair too." Barbara reluctantly allowed me 3 minutes. I explained Lisa's situation calmly and distributed copies of the ADA requirements. Some neighbors nodded in agreement. Furthermore, I concluded I've documented selective enforcement of HOA rules throughout our community with photographic evidence. I held up my folder of pictures showing numerous violations that went unpunished at certain homes. Barbara slammed her gavel. Meeting adjourned. As people filed out, Kevin approached me. "Be careful," he whispered. "Barbara has friends on the city council, but you're not alone in this fight." I drove home feeling both worried and determined. When I pulled into my driveway, my heart stopped. Yellow eviction notices were plastered all over my front door. The eviction notices weren't even legal. They were fake HOA documents made to look official. I tore them down before Lisa could see them and worry even more. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of drilling. I ran outside to find 2 men installing a security camera on the light post directly facing my house. "What's going on?" I demanded. "HOA security upgrades," the installer Replied without looking at me. All common areas are getting cameras, except this camera wasn't pointing at any common area, it was aimed directly at my front door. I called my friend Mia, who was a real estate lawyer. They can't do this, she confirmed after hearing everything. Document everything, get a camera of your own. I installed a doorbell camera that afternoon. Within an hour Barbara Thompson herself marched up to my porch and slipped another notice into my mailbox. My camera caught her smirking at my door. The notice was for another fine, $750 for making false accusations against the board. At the bottom was a handwritten note: payment plans available if needed. We understand disabilities can be financially straining. That was the last straw. I created a private neighborhood Facebook group called Willow Creek Transparency and invited everyone except board members. By evening 50 neighbors had joined. I shared my documentation of selective rule enforcement with time-stamped photos. The comments poured in. They fined me $300 for my daughter's basketball hoop, but ignored the identical one at the treasurer's house. Barbara's son parks his commercial truck at her house every weekend against HOA rules. They denied my request for a solar panel, but approved one for Barbara's friend. The next morning someone slipped a large envelope under my door. Inside were financial documents showing that the HOA had paid $45,000 to a landscaping company owned by Barbara's brother for work that was never completed. The note read, "I'm on the budget committee, there's more. Be careful who you trust." One made copies and locked the originals in my safe. When Lisa left for physical therapy, I drove to the county records office. The property maps showed that my wheelchair ramp was actually built entirely within my property line, not on common areas, as the HOA claimed. That afternoon 3 board members, including Barbara, knocked on my door. "We've come to offer a compromise," Barbara said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Will allow temporary use of the wheelchair provided it's covered with an approved neutral-colored top when outside." I remained calm. "That's not a reasonable accommodation under federal law. Also, I'd like to discuss these financial records showing HOA funds paid to your brother's company." Barbara's face went pale. The other board members exchanged nervous glances. "You're making a big mistake," Barbara hissed. "I've been running this community for 15 years. People who challenge me don't last long here." After they left, I noticed a white van parked across the street. The same van was there the next day and the day after. Lisa was becoming anxious. "Maybe we should just move, Sam. I don't want to cause trouble." "This isn't about trouble," I told her. "This is about standing up to bullies. We have every right to be here." I contacted the local news and showed them my evidence of discrimination and possible financial misconduct. They were interested, but needed more sources. Through the Facebook group I connected with the Millers, who had moved away after their son's service dog issue. They agreed to be interviewed. 3 other former residents came forward with similar stories. The reporter discovered that Barbara Thompson had been sued twice before for HOA discrimination in other communities. The cases had been settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. I was preparing dinner when Kevin Jackson knocked on my back door. "Don't react to what I'm about to tell you," he said quietly. "I'm not just your neighbor. I'm with the FBI's white-collar crime division. We've been investigating Barbara and this HOA for months." My mouth fell open. What financial fraud across multiple HOA ways? But now we're adding civil rights violations. He handed me his card. "We need your help to build our case. Can we count on you?" Before I could answer, we heard glass breaking at the front of the house. We ran to find a brick had been thrown through Lisa's bedroom window. Attached was a note: "Leave, or worse." Kevin immediately called it in. "This changes things," he said grimly. "Now we've got criminal intimidation." As police officers took statements and collected evidence, Barbara drove by slowly in her luxury SUV. Watching, our eyes met, and she gave me a cold smile before driving away. I turned to Kevin. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Someone was knocking on my door at 9:30 p.m. I peeked through the blinds to see my neighbor Kevin Jackson standing on my porch, constantly looking over his shoulder. The moment I opened the door, he pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk about Barbara and what she did to your sister's wheelchair," he whispered, his eyes wide with worry. "But not where anyone can see us talking." My stomach dropped. "Did you help her do that to Lee's chair?" I asked, ready to throw him out. Kevin shook his head quickly. No, the opposite. I've been watching Barbara for months." He pulled out a wallet and flipped it open to reveal an FBI badge. "I'm not really a retired accountant. I'm an undercover agent." I nearly fell into my chair. "FBI for an HOA dispute. This goes way beyond wheelchair ramps and lawn ornaments," Kevin said, lowering his voice even more. "Barbara Thompson has been running the scam in 3 different neighborhoods over the past 5 years." Kevin explained that after receiving dozens of complaints about discrimination, the FBI started investigating Barbara 6 months ago. She would take over HOAs, change the rules, and then use her power to force out families she didn't want in the neighborhood. "Families like yours and your sister's," Kevin said grimly. "But she also schemes money off the top. Those special assessments for the community pool repairs last year, half that money went straight into her personal account." I remembered writing that $800 check, barely able to afford it. "Are you serious? And nobody noticed?" She replaces board members With her friends, anyone who questions her gets targeted with violations. Until they move away. Kevin pulled out his phone and showed me photos of Barbara meeting with contractors behind the clubhouse. She gets kickbacks from every vendor she forces the HOA to hire, so all those contractor vans at her house I started aren't just for her kitchen remodel. Kevin finished, they're paying her to get exclusive HOA contracts. My mind raced through all the changes since Barbara became president 2 years ago. The Land ESC aping company that doubled our fees, the new security system. Nobody wanted the special assessment for roof repairs that somehow only happened on her street. But why chain my sister's wheelchair, I asked. That seems personal. Kevin's expression darkened. Barbara targets anyone she sees as lowering property values. She's been recorded using horrible language about people with disabilities. We have emails where she told the board, your sister makes the neighborhood look like a hospital zone. My blood boiled. That's disgusting. It's also legal. Kevin said the wheelchair incident gives us solid evidence of ADA violations, but we need more to build a complete case about the financial crimes. He slid a small device across my table. This is a special voice recorder. We need you to get her to admit to the wheelchair incident, and maybe talk about the HOA finances. I stared at the device. You want me to spy on her? You'd be helping us build a case that could help dozens of families she's targeted. Kevin explained, but I won't lie, it's not without risk. Barbara has friends in the Cal Police Department too. Just then headlights swept across my living room window. Kevin ducked down and peeked through the blinds. That's her car, he whispered. Third time today she's driven by your house. We watched in silence as Barbara's luxury SUV crawled past, slowing dramatically in front of my home. Kevin waited until she turned the corner before standing up. She's watching you, he warned. Be careful what you say around anyone in the neighborhood. Some of them report back to her. As Kevin prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Think about it. If you want to help, text the word pool to the number I put in your phone. If not, I understand. After he left, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. From down the hall, I could hear Lisa struggling to get from her wheelchair to her bed without help, too proud to call out to me. The sound of her quiet frustration made my decision clear. I picked up my phone and typed pool.
Within seconds a response came back, meeting tomorrow playground 300 pm.
I went to check on Lisa, but as I approached her room I noticed something outside her window, a small red light blinking in the bushes across the street. Someone was watching our house. I spotted Kevin sitting alone on a bench at the community playground, pretending to read a newspaper like an old-time spy movie. As I approached, a mom with 2 young children walked past, and Kevin immediately switched to talking loudly about baseball scores. Once they were out of earshot, he handed me a coffee cup. The recorder is inside, he whispered. Just press the bottom of the cup once to activate it. As we discussed the plan, I noticed the Henderson kids playing nearby. Their mom, Judy Henderson, was on the HOA board and Barbara's close friend. Don't look now, but we're being watched, I murmured. Kevin nodded slightly. That's why we're only talking about baseball. As far as anyone knows, we barely know each other. He explained that the FBI had discovered Barbara was using HOA funds to pay for her daughter's college tuition and her husband's golf membership. They needed evidence connecting her directly to these financial decisions and their harassment campaign against homeowners who opposed her. The meeting tonight is perfect, Kevin said, referring to the emergency HOA session Barbara had called. We know she's planning to announce another special assessment, supposedly for security cameras, but the money will mostly disappear. I frowned. How am I supposed to get her to admit anything with the entire board there? You're not, Kevin replied. You're going to publicly challenge her about Lisa's wheelchair. She'll get angry, and afterward she'll likely confront you privately. That's when you record her. As we finished talking, I saw Judy Henderson staring at us while pretending to watch her kids. She immediately pulled out her phone and started texting. She's reporting to Barbara right now, Kevin said quietly. Remember, as far as you know, I'm just a friendly neighbor. That evening I arrived at the clubhouse for the HOA meeting with the recording coffee cup and a folder full of printouts about ads. Every seat was taken with many neighbors standing along the walls. Barbara sat at the front table with her 4 loyal board members wearing her usual fake smile. Before we the new security assessment, I called out before Barbara could start. I'd like to address the illegal chaining of my disabled sister's wheelchair. The room went silent. Barbara's smile vanished. That matter was handled according to HOA bylaws, she said coldly. Your personal grievances aren't on tonight's agenda. I held up the chain that had been on Lisa's wheelchair. This is discrimination against a person with disabilities. It violates federal law. Several neighbors gasped. Barbara's face turned red. Your sister's equipment was improperly restored. Barbara snapped. The board's decisions are final. We never voted on restraining a wheelchair, said Jack Wilson, a board member. I hardly knew. When did we approve that? Barbara glared at Jack. We discussed this in private, Jack, like we discussed the $50,000 for the clubhouse renovation that never happened. I asked loudly. The room erupted in confused questions. Many neighbors looked shocked. They hadn't known about the missing renovation money. This meeting is about security cameras, not your baseless accusations, Barbara shouted, banging her gavel. Security that we clearly need with troublemakers like you in our community. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, I noticed Kevin at the back typing something on his phone. Our plan was working. Barbara was losing control. After Barbara abruptly ended the meeting, I lingered in the parking lot, pretending to look for my keys. Sure enough, Barbara stormed over to my car. You've made a serious mistake, she hissed, jabbing her finger at my chest. Your little stunt tonight will cost you. I pressed the bottom of my coffee cup. Are you threatening me, Barbara? I'm promising you consequences, she said. Your sister's wheelchair was just the beginning. Keep pushing, and you'll find your car towed, your trees cut down for safety violations, and fines you can't possibly pay. Why are you doing this? I asked, trying to keep her talking. What did we ever do to you? Barbara stepped closer. People like your sister bring down property values. I've worked too hard building this community to let people like you ruin it. The same way I got rid of the Gonzalez family and their noisy kids and old Mrs. Wilkins with her ugly medical equipment on the porch. My hands shook with anger, but I kept recording. And the money for the clubhouse renovation, the new security system, she gave a small smug smile. Managing an HOA isn't free. Consider it my compensation for keeping undesirables out. As she walked away, she turned back. I'd start packing if I were you. By this time next month you won't be able to afford to live here anymore. I waited until she drove away before texting Kevin. Got it all. His reply came seconds later. Don't go home yet. Wait 30 minutes. I sat in my car wondering what he meant. Then I saw Barbara's SUV return to the clubhouse. She went inside with two board members carrying folders. Through the window I could see them removing papers from the filing cabinets and stuffing them into bags. They were destroying evidence. I snapped photos with my phone, then ducked down as they returned to the parking lot. Once they left, I drove home the long way to make sure I wasn't followed. When I finally got home, I found Lisa waiting up for me. How did it go? She asked anxiously. Before I could answer, we heard the sound of something hitting our garage door. I rushed to the window just in time to see Barbara's teenage son running away after spray painting. Leave now across our garage. It went exactly as planned, I said grimly, sending the photos and a message to Kevin. They're scare